My parents' smiles for my sister's college acceptance were so bright they blinded them to my entire future. It wasn't the first time, but it was the moment I realized I had to build my own path, because they simply weren't looking. Growing up, our home operated on a clear hierarchy. Chloe was queen. I existed in her shadow. The differences started early. She wore crisp uniforms to Eastwood Academy. I carried a discount backpack to Riverside Public. No one explained why. "You're just more independent," Eleanor would tell me, smoothing Chloe's hair while I stood watching. "You don't need as much attention." Independence felt like abandonment when Chloe got riding lessons and I babysat for pocket money. Chloe's 16th birthday brought a trip to Rome. Mine? $50 and a note about responsibility. Her report cards graced the fridge, mine vanished into a drawer. A B- in algebra for Chloe meant a tutor. My straight A's went unnoticed until the guidance counselor called about scholarships. Then, junior year, came the college conversation. We sat in the living room, like strangers. Arthur beamed, his whole face transformed, announcing Chloe's Duke acceptance. Full tuition, room and board, everything covered. Eleanor glowed, "We're so proud, sweetheart." I asked quietly, "What about me?" "I've been looking, too." Arthur's face shifted, that familiar, uncomfortable mask. "You're capable. We thought you'd want to make your own way. Student loans build character." Chloe just examined her manicured nails. She didn't need to gloat. That night, surrounded by college brochures, something hardened inside me. Not anger, not quite. Something colder, sharper, a plan forming. I applied to 20 schools, 16 offered scholarships. I chose University of Michigan for the money, demanding nothing but my effort. The financial aid package covered tuition. I worked 3 jobs for living expenses, sleeping 4 hours a night. The campus library became my second home. I took extra courses, finished requirements early, and barely came home. Eleanor called occasionally, usually to ask if I'd spoken to Chloe. "She's having trouble adjusting," she'd say. "Maybe you could give her some sisterly advice." I'd been awake for 36 hours, fueled by vending machine coffee. "I'm sure she'll figure it out," I'd say, "she always does." The resentment tasted metallic, but I swallowed it down and kept working. Sophomore year, Professor Davies mentioned his consulting firm needed interns. Unpaid, but connections mattered more than money. I said yes immediately. Within 3 months, I was analyzing market trends for clients managing millions. Junior year brought the real opportunity. The firm offered a full-time position after graduation. The salary made me dizzy. I signed the contract in my dorm room, hands shaking, and told no one. 2 days later, Chloe called, her voice bright with excitement. "Guess what Eleanor and Arthur just gave me for my 18th birthday? A BMW. Silver, gorgeous." I literally screamed. I calculated quickly. Chloe had turned 18 years ago, but their generosity never expired. This must have been an upgrade, a new gift. "That's wonderful," I managed, pushing away the familiar sting. "What are you doing for your birthday next month?" She laughed, that easy sound of someone who'd never chosen between celebration and survival. "Working, probably." "You're always so serious." "You should relax." I hung up and stared at the employment contract. Relaxation felt like a luxury I hadn't earned. Senior year brought complications. A week before finals, bacterial bronchitis hit. The campus health center diagnosed it, ordered rest. Rest wasn't an option. 3 papers, 2 presentations, consulting work. Professor Davies knew I was sick. I showed up anyway, 101-degree fever, gripping my notes. "Miss Carter, you look terrible. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I insisted, studying myself. "May I continue?" He allowed it. I delivered the presentation, answered questions, then collapsed in the hallway. Campus security called an ambulance despite my protests. I spent the night in the hospital for dehydration and exhaustion, missing 2 exams. Eleanor didn't visit, she was in Florida helping Chloe plan a gala. Arthur called once, distracted. Your mother says you're in the hospital. What happened? Exhausted. I'll be fine. Well, take care. We can't afford medical bills right now with Chloe's expenses. I hung up, counting ceiling tiles, knowing my collapse ranked second to Chloe's social calendar. Professor Davies let me retake the exams. I aced both, working from bed, my roommate bringing soup. Your family didn't come? She asked gently. They're busy. She didn't push, but her silence said everything. Graduation preparations followed. I bought my own cap and gown, secured a Boston apartment, arranged everything post-graduation without family input. I watched other families celebrate, always an observer. 2 weeks before commencement, Chloe called. Eleanor and Arthur are coming to my graduation. They're making a whole week of it in Florida. I'm so excited. That's great, I managed, knowing what came next. When is yours again? Same weekend. Tuesday ceremony. Silence. Oh, that's unfortunate timing. It's fine, I lied, voice steady despite the ache. They feel terrible, but they already booked everything for mine. Duke graduation is a bigger deal, you know. Plus, my gallery opening is that weekend, too, and they promise to be there. Gallery opening. Right. Really, it's okay, I said. I'll be fine. The Tuesday of my graduation arrived warm and bright. I walked across that stage with 200 others, my name slightly mispronounced. No one cheered for me specifically. I accepted my diploma, watched other families, cameras flashing, flowers, tears of pride. My phone stayed silent. The ceremony ended. I caught my cap, tucked my diploma, and navigated through crowds of embracing families. The reception featured punch and cookies. I stood near the table, watching groups form and dissolve. An older woman in an elegant suit approached. You walked alone, she observed. Yes. I'm Dr. Margaret Odom. I teach at the business school. I noticed you at the job fair. You asked better questions than most MBA candidates. Thank you, I said, uncertain. Are you moving to Boston for that consulting position? Surprise must have shown. She smiled. I track promising students. Victoria Reeves recruited you personally, didn't she? She did. Victoria and I went to school together. She doesn't extend offers lightly. Dr. Odom handed me a business card. If you ever need guidance, advice, or just someone who understands the path you're walking, call me. Young women building careers without family safety nets need advocates. I kept that card for years. Never called, but knowing it existed, mattered. Boston welcomed me with summer humidity and endless possibility. My studio in South End was small but mine. I furnished it with thrift store finds, assembling everything myself, creating a space that felt like achievement. Work began immediately. Victoria threw me into projects that would have terrified me 6 months earlier. Now they were just challenges. I learned corporate structure, negotiation, how to read financial statements like novels. My colleagues were older, connected, talking casually about summer homes and family businesses. I learned to translate their language, to move in their world without advertising my origins. 3 months in, Victoria called me to her office after a grueling client presentation. You handled Barrett well today. He's notorious for testing young associates. You didn't flinch when he questioned your analysis. Most people fold, you doubled down and proved your point. She studied me. Where does that confidence come from? I thought about my answer. When you grow up feeling like you have to justify your existence, proving your work becomes second nature. Victoria's expression shifted, recognition crossing her features. I grew up in rural Mississippi. First in my family to finish high school, let alone college. Nobody believed I'd amount to anything. We'd never discussed personal histories. This revelation felt significant. How did you handle it? I asked. Anger at first. Then I realized anger was exhausting. So I channeled it into excellence. Made every success a rebuttal. She leaned back. But eventually you have to decide whether you're building something for yourself or just to spite everyone who doubted you. The former is sustainable. The latter burns you out. Her words lodged somewhere deep. This warning wrapped in understanding. The holidays approached. Eleanor called in November about Thanksgiving. We're doing dinner at home. Will you come? I'm working, I said, which was partially true. I'd volunteered to cover for colleagues. The markets don't stop for holidays. Well, Chloe will be disappointed. She wanted to introduce her new boyfriend. Of course, she did. Chloe's life unfolded like scheduled programming: boyfriend, engagement, wedding, children, all planned. I spent Thanksgiving in the office, reviewing spreadsheets, eating Chinese takeout. The silence felt peaceful, not lonely. No performing gratitude I didn't feel. No watching Chloe's life celebrated while mine was ignored. Victoria stopped by around 7, surprised to find me there. I thought you went home for the holiday. This is more productive. She sat across from me. I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me at your age. Success won't fill the holes your family left. It'll just make you better at pretending they don't exist. I'm not pretending anything doesn't exist, I said defensively. Aren't you? You're here on Thanksgiving, alone, working instead of feeling. That's avoidance dressed up as ambition. I wanted to argue but couldn't. She wasn't wrong. I'm not saying reconnect with them, Victoria continued. I'm saying be honest about what you're actually doing and why. Otherwise, you'll wake up at 50, successful and miserable, wondering why achievement feels hollow. She left. I sat there thinking about hollow and honesty and what I was really building. Christmas came and went. I sent expensive gifts, chosen to demonstrate my success. Eleanor called to thank me for the cashmere scarf, mentioned Chloe loved the designer bag, and asked nothing about my life beyond housework. Busy, I said, my standard. You work too hard, sweetheart. You should enjoy your 20s. Enjoyment required bandwidth I couldn't spare. Every moment not working felt like falling behind. Year 2 brought a promotion and a raise that finally let me breathe financially. I moved to a 1-bedroom in Beacon Hill, bought new furniture, built credit strategically. Every financial decision was now a move on a chessboard only I could see. Victoria introduced me to her financial advisor, Teresa, who talked about wealth building like warfare strategy. Your 20s are about foundation, Teresa explained. Retirement accounts, emergency funds, investments, boring but essential. Your 30s are about leverage, taking calculated risks. We built my plan. Teresa asked questions no one ever had. What did I want in 10, 20 years? What did financial security mean beyond just having money? I struggled. Money meant not being at anyone's mercy. Beyond that, the vision blurred. That's common for people who grew up without stability, Teresa said gently. You know what you're running from better than what you're running toward. Third question that year about my motivations. The universe seemed determined to make me examine my foundations. Chloe announced her engagement that spring. Eleanor called, crying with joy. Ethan is wonderful. His family owns a vineyard in Sonoma Valley. They're getting married next June at his parents' estate. It'll be beautiful. Congratulations to her, I said mechanically. You'll be in the wedding party, of course. Chloe wants you as a bridesmaid. My instinct was refusal. Being a prop in Chloe's perfect narrative held zero appeal. But something stopped me. Curiosity, perhaps, to see if she'd meaningfully include me, or just parade me as evidence of bonds that didn't exist. I'll check my schedule, I said noncommittally. Wedding planning consumed the next year of family communications. Chloe called periodically with breathless updates, dress fittings, flower choices, catering decisions, each detail treated like international importance. I listened, made appropriate sounds, and returned to work that actually mattered. A major pharmaceutical company hired our firm to analyze a potential acquisition. The project was massive, complex, career-defining. Victoria assigned me lead analyst. This is your audition for junior partner, she said bluntly. Succeed, you're on track. Fail, you stay where you are. Failure wasn't an option. I buried myself in research, financial models, market analysis. The pharmaceutical industry was cutthroat. Patents, pipelines, regulatory nightmares. I learned it all, built models predicting outcomes. 3 months in, I presented preliminary findings to the client's executive team. 15 people, most twice my age, all skeptical of this young woman telling them how to spend 9 figures. I walked them through my analysis, anticipated questions, addressed concerns. By the end, the CEO nodded. This is excellent work. When can we see the complete report? We closed the deal 6 weeks later. The client sent champagne and a bonus exceeding my annual salary. Victoria called me to her office. Junior partner, she said, sliding the contract across her desk. Effective immediately. Congratulations. I stared at the title, the salary, the profit sharing. It felt surreal. You earned this, Victoria said, not through luck or connections, but through competence and relentless effort. Own it. I signed, hands trembling slightly. 26 years old, making more money than my parents ever had. The satisfaction felt complicated. Triumph mixed with something sharper, like vindication. Chloe's wedding approached. The bridesmaid dress cost $800. Eleanor called, asking if I needed help covering it, her tone charity itself. I can manage, I said coolly. Of course, sweetheart. I just know consulting doesn't always pay that well. I didn't correct her. The wedding weekend arrived with pageantry. Sonoma Valley in June. Perfect weather, perfect venue. I flew in Friday, rented a car, checked into a hotel where rooms cost more than my first apartment. The family gathered for the rehearsal dinner. Aunts, uncles, Ethan's wealthy family talking casually about properties. I sat at the end of a table, nursing wine, calculating my escape. Ethan's mother, Martha, approached. You're Chloe's sister? The one in Boston? Yes. What do you do there? Finance consulting. Junior partner at Reeves and Associates. Her eyebrows rose. Reeves. Victoria Reeves. You know her? Our family's investment portfolio is managed by her firm. She's formidable. Martha studied me with new interest. Junior partner at your age is impressive. You must be quite talented. Validation from this stranger felt better than any acknowledgement from my parents. We talked for 20 minutes about markets and strategies. I realized, with some surprise, I'd become someone who could hold her own in these conversations. The wedding was flawlessly orchestrated. Chloe looked beautiful, Ethan looked besotted. Everything unfolded like a magazine spread. I smiled, stood where directed, played my role. During the reception, Arthur found me at the bar. Your sister looks happy. She does. Ethan seems like a good man. Stable, good family. I understood the subtext, approval of Chloe's choices, the security her marriage represented. Everything on the correct timeline. What about you? Arthur asked. Anyone special? Work keeps me busy. He frowned. You shouldn't prioritize career over personal life. Women have limited time for these things. The casual sexism was almost funny. Almost. I'll keep that in mind, I said, signaling the bartender. Arthur drifted away. I watched the celebration from the margins, an observer in someone else's happiness, feeling only relief when the weekend ended. 2 years passed in a blur of conference rooms and client dinners. My portfolio grew. Promotions came faster. I moved into a better apartment, bought furniture that wasn't secondhand, built savings that felt like armor. Chloe posted constantly on social media, Bali trips, concerts, brunches with friends who looked catalog perfect. She worked part-time at a gallery, finding herself. Eleanor commented on every photo with heart emojis. I rarely posted. My life happened in boardrooms, spreadsheets, strategic networking. Nothing photogenic about wealth accumulation. The months after Chloe's wedding brought shifts. Eleanor called more frequently, conversations inevitably circling Chloe's newlywed life. Ethan's family had embraced her, yacht trips, influential friends. They're so generous, Eleanor gushed. Last weekend, they flew Chloe and Ethan to their place in Vail. Can you imagine? That's nice, I said, reviewing reports. Maybe you should visit them. Get to know Ethan's family. So many connections in business. Could be good for your career. The suggestion that I needed their connections stung. As if my accomplishments meant nothing without social access. I'm doing fine with my career, Eleanor. Of course, sweetheart. But sometimes it's about who you know. Exhaustion settled over me. No matter what I achieved, it would never measure up to Chloe's effortless navigation of privileged spaces. Work provided refuge. Victoria assigned increasingly complex projects, trusting me with clients who specifically requested my expertise. The pharmaceutical deal had opened doors. My reputation grew. Industry publications mentioned me. Conference organizers invited me to speak. Each opportunity felt like building something permanent, a professional identity independent of family disappointment. During a conference in Dallas, I met Michael Fitzgerald, a senior partner at a New York City firm. We ended up at the hotel bar. You've made quite an impression, Michael said. 3 people today asked for introductions. That's unusual for someone your age. I've been fortunate, I said carefully. Fortune has nothing to do with it. I've seen your work. Meticulous, innovative, you don't oversell. That combination is rare. He handed me his card. If you ever consider New York City, call me. We could use someone with your skills. I tucked it away. New York City wasn't on my radar, but the seed was planted. Bigger opportunities might exist beyond Boston. Chloe announced her pregnancy that October. She waited until the 2nd trimester. Eleanor called, crying with joy about becoming a grandmother. Isn't it wonderful? Chloe's due in late April or early May. They're hoping for a girl. Congratulations, I offered. You'll be an aunt. Doesn't that excite you? It should have. Normal people felt excitement. I felt something more complicated. Happiness for my sister, mixed with the old, familiar distance. Watching their lives through protective glass. The baby shower happened in December, at Ethan's parents' estate. I flew back, arrived with an expensive gift chosen by my assistant, and endured 3 hours of pastel decorations and games. Chloe glowed. Everyone doted on her. I sat near the refreshment table, eating petit fours, counting minutes until acceptable departure. You look miserable, someone said beside me. It was Sophia, Ethan's sister. That obvious? Only to someone else looking for escape routes. Sophia settled into the chair. These events are torture if you don't perform enthusiasm convincingly. I'm just not excited about 3 hours of onesie decorating. She studied me. You're the sister who works in Boston, right? Chloe mentioned you're some kind of financial genius. I'm a consultant. Hardly a genius. Martha, my mother, said you impressed her at the wedding. Not easy to do. We talked for the rest of the shower, comparing notes on career paths and family expectations. Sophia worked in tech, had built a startup. She understood the pressure of establishing yourself outside traditional family structures. The worst part is the invisibility, Sophia said. You can accomplish significant things, but if it doesn't fit their narrative of success, it barely registers. Exactly, I agreed, relieved. We exchanged numbers, an unexpected alliance forming between family misfits. Sophia lived in San Francisco but traveled frequently to New York City. Over the following months, she became a friend, the first I'd really made who understood the specific loneliness of being capable and overlooked. Chloe had her daughter, Lily Grace, in early May. 8 pounds and perfect. Photos flooded social media, Eleanor and Arthur beaming beside the hospital bed in what I now understood was Chloe and Ethan's home in Santa Barbara County. They'd moved there after the wedding into a restored Victorian Ethan's family helped them purchase. I sent flowers and a substantial check, made appropriate congratulatory noises, and returned to work. The baby shifted family dynamics again. Every conversation revolved around Lily's sleeping patterns, eating habits, milestones. Eleanor retired early to help with childcare, spending weekdays at Chloe's beautiful Santa Barbara home. Chloe had quietly left her gallery position, transitioning to full-time motherhood with the same ease she approached everything else. I wish you could see her more, Eleanor said during one video call, turning the camera to a sleeping infant. She's growing so fast. She's beautiful, I said honestly. When will you visit? Chloe asks about you. Work is intense right now. Maybe summer. You always say that. Work will always be there. Family should come first. The criticism stung. Unfair, yet partially true. I prioritized work because it rewarded effort. Family felt like reaching for people who never quite grasped back. Summer brought the opportunity that changed everything. Victoria called me to her office, expression unreadable. I need to discuss something sensitive, she began. Michael Fitzgerald contacted me. He wants to offer you a position in New York City. Surprise rendered me speechless. I'd spoken with Michael a few times, casual industry chats. Nothing that suggested active recruitment. He's offering senior partner track, Victoria continued. Significant salary increase, immediate equity stake, your own team. It's exceptional. What do you think I should do? I think you need to decide what you're building and where you want to build it. Boston's been good to you. New York City opens different doors. She leaned forward. I won't lie. I'd hate to lose you, but my job is developing talent, not trapping it. If this move serves your goals, take it. I spent a week weighing options. Boston represented safety, established reputation. New York City meant starting over professionally while maintaining momentum, risky, but potentially exponential. Sophia offered perspective. New York City is brutal but brilliant. If you can succeed there, you can succeed anywhere. Plus, you'd be closer to family geographically, even if not emotionally. That's almost a negative, I admitted. Fair point. But consider this, you've built yourself in Boston partly in reaction to them. What could you build in New York City purely for yourself? The question settled something. I accepted Michael's offer. Year 3 brought the windfall. A major deal closed, one I'd orchestrated from initial contact to final signatures. My bonus exceeded 6 figures. Victoria called me to her office. "You've earned partner track," she said simply. "But there's something else." She slid a folder across her desk, property listings in Brooklyn. "Real estate builds generational wealth. You're making good money, but money in accounts depreciates. Property appreciates, especially in Brooklyn." I studied the listings. Most felt impossible. Prices that made my stomach drop. But one caught my attention, a penthouse in Dumbo, newly renovated, south-facing, floor-to-ceiling windows. The owner needed a fast sale. The price was astronomical, but manageable with my savings and a mortgage. 3 weeks later, I signed the papers. The penthouse became mine. I furnished it slowly, choosing every piece. This space belonged to nobody's shadow. I didn't tell my family. Why would I? They'd never ask about my job beyond vague pleasantries. Eleanor still sent care packages meant for struggling 20-somethings, instant noodles, discount laundry detergent. Life continued. Work expanded. I traveled frequently, managed bigger accounts, made decisions affecting millions. The penthouse became my sanctuary, a place to shed professional armor and just exist. Nearly 18 months passed in this rhythm, building wealth, reputation, a life that finally felt solid. Then came Grandma Helen's birthday dinner invitation. I almost declined. Family gatherings meant feeling like a guest in someone else's story. But Grandma had always been kind, slipping me folded 20s and telling me I'd do just fine, in a tone that suggested she saw more than the others. The restaurant was predictably upscale, menus presented like sacred texts. I arrived deliberately late, hoping to minimize small talk. Everyone was seated. Eleanor, Arthur, Chloe, aunts, uncles, cousins I barely recognized. "Look who finally showed up," Chloe said brightly, designer labels visible. "We thought you forgot about us." "Traffic was terrible," I said, sliding into the empty chair next to Aunt Sarah. Dinner proceeded. Chloe dominated conversation, describing her new startup position, impressive until you realized it meant answering phones and managing social media. Eleanor and Arthur hung on every word. "Tell us about your work," Grandma Helen said, turning to me. "Your mother mentioned you're in Boston." "Finance consulting," I said simply. "It keeps me busy." Arthur made a dismissive sound. "Consulting? That's one of those vague jobs nobody really understands." Heat flashed through my chest, but I kept my voice level. "It pays the bills." "Just bills?" Chloe asked with mock sympathy. "That must be hard. Brooklyn's expensive, right? Are you managing okay?" Something in her tone, that performative concern masking judgment, made me tired. So tired of being small to make them comfortable. "I'm managing fine," I said. "Actually, I recently bought a place in New York City." The table went silent. Not gradual quiet, but immediate absence of sound. Chloe laughed first, sharp and disbelieving. "New York City? Like Manhattan?" "New York City. Is there another one? You bought a place?" Eleanor's voice held confusion. "Like a condo?" "A penthouse in Dumbo." Arthur's fork clattered against his plate. "You're joking," Chloe said flatly. "You can't afford New York City. Nobody our age can afford New York City." I pulled up my phone, opened the photos, and slid it across the table. The screen showed my living room, those floor-to-ceiling windows, the skyline beyond, furniture costing more than some people's cars. Chloe grabbed the phone. Her face cycled through expressions, confusion, disbelief, then anger. "This is fake. This is obviously fake." "It's not fake," I said calmly. The address is 187 Franklin Street, 20th floor. Feel free to look it up. Eleanor leaned over. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. How could you possibly afford this? What aren't you telling us? I've been working, I said simply. Making good decisions, saving, investing on a consultant's salary. Arthur's skepticism dripped. Those places cost millions. 3.2 million, actually. I got a good deal. Chloe's voice rose sharply. This doesn't make sense. We paid for my education, gave me opportunities, supported my career development. She worked her way through school with nothing, and somehow she ends up with a Brooklyn penthouse. How is that fair? The word fair hung in the air, bitter and ironic. Fair? I repeated softly. You want to discuss fair? Arthur held up a hand. Let's not make this contentious. But something had broken loose inside me. All those years of swallowed resentment suddenly demanding air. You gave Chloe everything, I said, voice steady despite my racing heart. Private school, tutors, car, college, spending money. I got public school and student loans. You said it would build character. Well, congratulations. It did. Eleanor's eyes widened. We never meant to make you feel less important. Whether you meant to or not doesn't change the result. Chloe stood abruptly, chair scraping. You're being dramatic. So you had to work a little harder. Big deal. Stop playing victim just because you managed to get lucky with some job. Lucky? I said, tasting the word. Right. Lucky. Not the 3 jobs during college or the 60-hour weeks or the years of learning everything nobody bothered to teach me. Just luck. Girls, Arthur said firmly. This is your grandmother's birthday dinner. Aunt Sarah, silent until now, set down her wineglass. Her voice cut through the tension like a blade. Eleanor, Arthur, I've stayed quiet about this for years, but watching this unfold is frankly painful. Everyone turned. Aunt Sarah was Eleanor's older sister, successful, who'd built a medical practice from nothing. You've treated these girls differently since birth, Sarah continued. And you've done it so consistently you don't even see it anymore. Chloe got opportunities. She got support. She got the message that she deserved investment. What message do you think you sent the other one? Eleanor's face flushed. That's not fair, Sarah. We love both our daughters equally. Love and investment aren't the same thing. Sarah looked at me directly. I've watched you at family gatherings for years. Always quiet, always on the periphery, always working 3 times harder for a fraction of the recognition. And you know what? I'm not surprised you succeeded. I'm surprised you still show up here at all. The table fell into uncomfortable silence. Chloe stared at her plate. Arthur's jaw worked like he was chewing words he couldn't spit out. Grandma Helen spoke finally, her voice soft but carrying absolute authority. I've watched this too. And Sarah's right. You praised one child for breathing and ignored the other one's accomplishments. Now you're surprised one of them stopped waiting for your approval. She turned to me, expression gentle. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Not because you bought property, but because you built yourself into someone who could. Something cracked in my chest. I hadn't realized how much I'd needed to hear those words from someone in my family. Thank you, Grandma, I managed. Eleanor reached across the table. Honey, we didn't realize. That's the problem, I interrupted quietly. You didn't realize. Because you never asked. You never checked in about my life beyond surface pleasantries. You have no idea what I do, who I work with, what my days look like. Because you never asked. You never talked about it, Arthur protested weakly. Would you have listened? I met his eyes. Really listened? Or would you have found a way to redirect conversation back to Chloe's latest adventure? No one answered. The silence felt like confirmation. Chloe finally spoke, voice small. I didn't ask for them to treat us differently. I know, I said, and meant it. But you also never questioned it. You just accepted everything as your due while I fought for scraps. So what now? Eleanor asked. You're just going to cut us out of your life? I thought about that question carefully. Victoria's words echoed, running towards something, not just away. I'm not cutting you out, I said finally. But I'm also not going to keep pretending the past didn't happen. You made choices about how to raise us. Those choices had consequences. I'm living with mine. You can live with yours. Arthur cleared his throat. We could do better going forward. Maybe, I acknowledged. But understand that I don't need you to now. I needed you 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I needed you to notice when I made honor roll, when I got scholarships, when I graduated. I needed you to care about my life the way you cared about Chloe's. I don't need that anymore because I learned to validate myself. That sounds lonely, Eleanor said quietly. I considered her words. It was, but loneliness was better than constantly feeling inadequate in my own family. Grandma Helen raised her glass to honesty and to second chances if we're wise enough to take them. The dinner continued, but something fundamental had shifted. Conversation stayed careful, people choosing words deliberately. Chloe barely spoke. My parents kept glancing at me like I was a stranger. After dessert, Sarah pulled me aside. You handled that with more grace than I would have managed. Did I? I felt hollowed out, exhausted. You told the truth without cruelty. That takes strength. She squeezed my arm. Keep building your life. Let them catch up if they can. Driving home later, I called Victoria. How'd the family dinner go? Explosively, I admitted. I told them about the penthouse. My sister had a meltdown. Arthur looked like I'd joined a cult. My aunt defended me. My grandmother said she was proud. Sounds like a productive evening, Victoria said dryly. How do you feel? I thought about it. Lighter. Like I've been carrying something heavy and finally set it down. Good. That's what boundaries feel like. Uncomfortable, but necessary. The following weeks brought changes. Eleanor started calling more frequently, asking genuine questions about my work. Arthur sent an article about market trends, thought you might find this interesting. Chloe sent a long text, veering between defensive and apologetic, ultimately landing on, I'm trying to understand. I responded cautiously. Trust rebuilt slowly, if it rebuilt at all. 3 months later, I invited them to visit the penthouse. Eleanor cried when she saw it. Arthur walked through silently, touching furniture. Chloe stood at the windows, staring at the skyline. I'm sorry, she said suddenly. For everything. For not noticing. For taking everything for granted. For making you feel small. I made myself feel small, I corrected gently. I let their treatment define my worth. That was my mistake to fix. Still, she insisted. I should have been better. A better sister. You can be now, I said. If you want. She hugged me then, surprisingly tight. I want to try. They left after dinner, promises to visit again hanging in the air. I stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows, looking at the city lights, feeling something like peace settle in my bones. My phone buzzed. Victoria texting, how'd it go? I typed back, good. See you Monday. We've got the Morrison deal to close. I smiled. Work awaited. Life awaited. Not the life I'd imagined as a kid, watching Chloe open presents I'd never receive. Something better. Something I'd built myself brick by brick, decision by decision. The penthouse was never really about the property. It was about proving to myself that I could create value where none had been given. That I could transform neglect into ambition, dismissal into determination. Some people inherit their starting point. Others build it from scratch. Both paths work, but the second one teaches you something the first never can, that you're capable of more than you imagined when you stop waiting for permission to begin. I looked at my reflection in the window glass, the city lights creating a crown around my silhouette. That woman staring back had earned every inch of this space. Not through luck or handouts, but through relentless forward motion, even when nobody was watching. My phone rang. Grandma Helen. Hello, sweetheart. Just wanted to tell you again how proud I am. And not just of your success, of your grace through all of it. Thanks, Grandma. That means everything. I know your path was harder, but look where it led you. Look at who you became. After we hung up, I poured wine and settled onto my couch. The one I'd chosen myself, in the home I'd earned. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove my worth to the only person whose opinion ultimately mattered, myself. The revenge, if you could call it that, wasn't in the penthouse or the money or even in their shock. It was in becoming someone who no longer needed their validation to know my value. That was the real victory. The quiet triumph nobody could take away. What kind of peace does true self-validation bring you?